Well, this is one way to start a show, with a history lesson and a trivia question. And only my little dog can hear it. So let's go. So here's the lesson part that sets up the trivia question. Before the start of the 1961 season, the Washington Senators moved to Minnesota and became the Twins. The Senators that moved out of D.C. were replaced with an expansion Senators team who played their inaugural season at Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C. Now the trivia question set up. It's April 21st, 1961, on a Friday night, and we're at Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington, Minnesota, better known as the Met. Over 24,000 fans came out to see the first ever Minnesota Twins home season opener in franchise history, ironically, against the Washington Senators. Question: who was the first batter to come up to the plate to face Camille Pascual and the brand new Twins at the Met? Answer: the man in the moment, Washington Senators, Marty Keough. Follow-up question: who got the first hit against the brand new Twins at their home park? Answer: Senators, Marty Keough. Follow-up question to the follow-up question. And this one's for all the marbles, kids. Who scored the first run in the first official MLB game ever played at the Met Stadium? If you said Marty Keough, you're right. A few obscure trivia questions about a new team, a used stadium, and a player with baseball in his blood. Marty has 4 generations of baseball players in his family, probably 5 by now. Both of Marty's parents were great ball players. Marty's dad went to the University of Cal at Berkeley and was a star pitcher for the Bears, and after graduating, turned down an offer to play with L.A. Angels. Marty's mom played ball on top-notch teams with players who are in the National Softball Hall of Fame, and in 1995, Marty Keough's parents, Zeke and Eleanor, were inaugural inductees to the Chaffey College Sports Hall of Fame. So, like they say, baseball runs in the family. You could even say baseball is in his blood. And you can even ask him, and Richard Martin Keough will probably tell you himself that he believes it to be true. His nickname? Marty. And he's a lefty who plays outfield and made his MLB debut in 1956. His family is from Southern California, and that's where his brothers Joe and Tom were born. Both played pro ball. Joe played in the majors. But Marty, he was born in Oakland, California, while his dad was attending Cal. Marty's date of birth? April 14th, 1934, and you know when I talk birthdays, it's good news. Mr. Keough is still with us at the age of 89 and probably watching games and doing a little scouting. I've noticed that quite a few of your Red Sox teammates are still around. Ted Boesfield, Jim Mahoney, Ted Wills. I'm sure there's more. Even before high school, Marty was playing American Legion and semi-pro ball and was a multi-sport superstar at Pomona High School, where in 1951 made the interscholastic first team in the Big 3 sports, and it could have been 4 if he ran track. Marty led an undefeated football team to the school's first championship and was then named 1951 CIF Football Player of the Year, gaining just under 2,800 yards, and his average of 44.5 yards per punt was better than any college punter in the nation. He was the leading scorer in the 2030 Club Invitational Basketball Tournament, topping all scorers with 35 points, finishing off his junior year of high school by showing his talent on the diamond by being named CIF Baseball Player of the Year. CIF stands for California Interscholastic Federation. Then, in 1952, you were picked by the LA Examiner as the Southern California Prep Athlete of the Year. Batted .525 his senior year, and at his last home game, they celebrated Marty Keough Day. He pitched a 2-hitter and was 5 for 6 at the plate, hit a homer, had a triple, and 3 singles. Rated the #1 schoolboy prospect on the West Coast, and a week after graduating high school, Marty and his parents turned down offers from the Brooklyn Dodgers, the White Sox, and said no to the $65,000 Branch Rickey and the Pirates offered, instead choosing to sign with the Red Sox. Marty said, "The Red Sox knew I wanted to play football at UCLA, so finally they asked me how much it would cost to sign me." Boston scout Ted McGrew flew out to California to the Keough house, and Tom Downey, Red Sox West Coast scout, also showed up, as Marty signed for $100 grand. But that wasn't all. They gave him a car, and one for his family, and a paid-up life insurance policy, the cost of 5 years of college, guaranteed salary levels in the minor leagues and the majors if he made the club. When Red Sox pitcher Frank Sullivan heard of the deal, he said, "What? No cabin cruiser?" Marty Keough started his pro career up north, not far from home, with Boston's Class C affiliate, the San Jose Red Sox, aka the Little Millionaires. Marty said, "Because of all the bonus babies on that squad, everybody called us the Gold Sox. We could have fielded an entire team of bonus babies and still had a few pitchers in reserve. The other teams and fans kidded us plenty. They wanted to know if we traveled in a Brinks truck and egged us on to have the bases painted with dollar signs." His first pro season in pro ball, and by mid-August, the Sporting News ran a photograph titled "Meteoric Marty," calling him a flash on the bases, saying he draws fans at San Jose just to see him run. Manager Red Marion called Marty the best young base runner he'd ever seen, and who could score from first base on a hit single to right field. Marty spent all of 1953 in San Jose, hitting .330 with that team, winning the league's playoffs. 1954 was spent in Florida with the AAA Louisville Colonels, leading all outfielders in the American Association All-Star balloting, and was called the best center field in Louisville history. Voted the fastest runner in the association by managers and stole home when playing against Herb Score. Speed was on his side when he hit an inside-the-park 3-run homer in the 8th inning of a playoff game against Indianapolis, and Marty Keough was a star in the Little World Series, hitting .478 with 5 doubles, a homer, and drove in 4 runs, winning the series. 1955. Marty was an all-star once again, and because of his speed, led the American Association in triples for the 2nd year in a row, finishing the season hitting .303 with 12 homers. Which brings us to April 21st, 1956, and Marty Keough makes his MLB debut at Yankee Stadium, and in his first at-bat in the majors, he got an RBI, knocking in Jackie Jensen. Unfortunately, this would be the only highlight. His first 2 seasons with the Red Sox, he only had 20 at-bats. Most of 1956 and 1957 was spent in the PCL, playing AAA ball with the San Francisco Seals, Boston's top affiliate. Marty's 1956 season ended in August when he chipped an ankle bone in a game at Portland. At the time, he was hitting .315, leading the Seals. How many times have you heard about an umpire injuring a player? Well, that's what happened in June of 1957 when Marty attempted to steal a base and had his hand stepped on by an umpire, imprinting 8 gashes in his hand, which he had wrapped up and continued playing. He was voted by the fans to the 1957 PCL All-Star team, and with the season over in October, decided to try something different by playing winter ball in Puerto Rico, hoping it would help him for the upcoming MLB season, saying, "I've always been a slow starter in the spring. Maybe winter ball will help get me going." And it did. 1958 was the year Marty Keough stuck in the big leagues for good, and for the next decade, not once going down to the minors. But like the other 2 outfielders, Gene Stevens and Bill Renna, Marty would have to wait his turn to get playing time, with 3 legends in front of him: Hall of Famer Ted Williams, a could-be Hall of Famer Jackie Jensen, and Gold Glove All-Star Jimmy Piersall. But things would change for Marty at the end of 1958 when Boston traded Jimmy Piersall to the Indians for Vic Wertz and Gary Gager. The 1959 spring training camp in Arizona was the Red Sox first in Scottsdale. My dad got your autograph there along with a dozen of your teammates. This was the season you got into nearly 100 games playing outfield for Boston. But halfway through the 1960 season, Marty Keough and Ted Boesfield were traded to the Indians in a swap for Carroll Hardy and Russ Nixon. When the 1960 season was over, Marty was selected in the expansion draft by the brand new Washington Senators, and 1961 would be the best of his 11-year career in the majors. Marty went on to play 4 seasons with the Cincinnati Reds, but was never a regular starter. He would start 1966 with the Atlanta Braves, finishing the season in Chicago as a Cub. 1967 would see Marty in the minors for the first time in over a decade, playing a full season of AAA ball with the San Diego Padres before calling it quits for playing ball in America. His autograph is one of those that's hard to read, just like Gene Stevens, the autograph above it. But it's not too hard to figure out. I just look at the names in my dad's 1959 Red Sox spring training program. Marty Keough played in over 800 MLB games and was one of the fastest players in the league. A clutch pinch hitter whose stats show that he won more than his fair share of games with his legs and his bat. So like many players did in those days, Marty decided to try his hand in the Japanese Baseball League. So in 1968, he packed up some gear and caught a flight to Japan to play with the Nankai Hawks. Two of his Hawks teammates were former MLB players, Don Blossingame and Masanori Murakami, who was the first Japanese-born player to play in the MLB. Odds are Marty's roommate was the former MLB player that spoke fluent English. But Marty, being a California boy, said one season in Japan was enough for him and came back home to Southern California. And if baseball isn't in his family's blood, I guess it's just a coincidence that decades later, Marty's son Matt would also play ball in Japan. Marty Keough is one of those guys who loves what he does and loves being around the game of baseball. And between 1967 and 1976 was a scout for the San Diego Padres, only leaving them after a decade to head up north a few miles to scout for the L.A. Dodgers. Through the 1979 season, and as late as 2011, Marty was on the St. Louis Cardinals staff as a scout. Talking about how baseball runs in Marty Keough's family, sure, there's no test to see if baseball's in your blood, but for over a decade, you played at the highest level there is, the major leagues. And sure, you weren't as good as Ted Williams. Few players were. But you can definitely say baseball runs in your family and was passed down from your grandpa to your dad, to you and your brothers, and then to your sons. 4 generations playing ball, some playing in the majors, with your dad turning down the chance so that together with your mom, the two could raise a family. And instead of being on the road for weeks at a time, possibly for years, he chose to be present in your life and not out playing the game of baseball, but at home, teaching it to you and your brothers. That's Ed on the left on his big wheel. That's me on the right on my cool bike I had. Family of 4 with one on the way.